Hey, what's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? Gracious good morning to you, good people. It's your girl KB. You know what I do, and you know why I do it. It is Thursday morning, or I call it Friday light. It is 3 o'clock in the morning exactly, and it is June 12th. I want to touch on a little something that I want to say tweaked the nerve yesterday, and I'm going to speak on it today because I've had time to calm myself. Calmate, chica. Yeah, no te preocupes. Yeah, that part. Yeah, that's my rusty, bad Spanish, but I know enough to get by. How about that? With that being said, that's exactly what I'm going to talk about that plucked my nerve yesterday. I live in Cali, and there are protests in some very big cities. I live in a big city in Cali. I am a native New Yorker, however, but I live in Cali, and I've lived in Cali for more years than I've lived in New York, but my formative years were spent in New York. That being said, there are protests everywhere, and the protests are against ICE and La Migra, ICE and immigration, and rightfully so. There's some sickening stuff being displayed. I mean, soul sickening, and people are being called illegals and treated any old kind of way, denied due process, denied rights. And where does the anger turn? To the African American community. Now, I've shared that my family is multiracial, and I have two different representations of Afro-Latino folks in my family. I have the proud Boricua faction, which is my first cousins. Then I have Guatemalan representation, which is my niece. Okay? I have a friend, a very cool sister, who is Saudi. And that's El Salvador, for folks who don't get it. And I have a lot of Mexican friends, some of whom lean toward, I want to say, embracing their Spanish roots. And which leads me to this word that's being used a lot these days: proximity. I use the word adjacent, but the new buzzword is proximity. Close to. I use adjacent because this kind of indicates you walk side by side, but you're never going to be on that path that you're identifying with, but you're close enough proximity. But adjacent is side by side. That's why I use that word. Two, whiteness, or whatever that means for you. For me, I want to say adjacent means you're walking side by side or parallel to uh, colonization, because you bought into that mindset and you're settling for just good enough. I'll never be a part of, but I'm just good enough. Whereas proximity, I'm close. I'm not sure if I want to be, but I know this is the way things are going. For me, adjacent has a desire to be assimilated into or acculturated toward whatever the social norm or the perceived social norm is. Then we have lovely terms like Oreo, coconut, banana, and those are all slurs. Yeah, believe it or not, those are all slurs. Anywho, getting to my point. Now, in these protests, I keep hearing, where are the blacks? We showed up for Black Lives Matter. We showed up for this. We showed up for that. I can't speak for all the blacks, but I can give you a basic overview of what the sentiment is. We showed up. We showed up before you voted. But because you were walking adjacent and enjoying proximity, and you bought into the lie that the country is going to be run like a business, forgetting that every business that this man has touched, for the most part, has gone bankrupt, forgetting that the charitable contributions were stolen and utilized. Now here's a kicker. Never mind the, 34 felony counts? Never mind the SA case. Never mind the hush money. As a representation of the highest office in this country, there's an ethics portion, and there's a level of deportment. Now, back in the day when I was a kid, you got graded on that, and that word basically meant your social skills, how you got along with others, how you conducted yourself. Deportment. Well, like I said, we got a failing grade on that. But anywho, the battle cry now is, where are the black people? We told you. Or, in the words of many a black mother while they're tearing the seat out of your britches, I done told your ass. Yeah, you know that point where you take them to the level of frustration because they've told you over and over again? That part? Yeah. So, that's what's going on. We've told you. You ignored it. You're enjoying proximity. There is a level of denial. And I want to say this. We have to look at how we embrace history and how apply those historic lessons. See, some of us have forgotten about things like the paper bag test, and that's done based on a colonized mind. And some people are going to say, oh, that only applies to African Americans. No, it does not. You know, they had a name for it within the African American community, but it goes across all cultures and countries. And Latinos are not excluded from that. And there's a TV show, I believe it's Love and Hip Hop Miami, and one of the cast members, beautiful African Latina, excuse me. I believe her stage name is Amaya Del Negro. I believe that's her name. You know, I'm old. That show is kind of youngish for me, but I do watch a lot of TV. Sister's beautiful, but the sister can also tell you some of the prejudice that she's experienced based on her physical appearance. Yeah, that part. Again, forgetting history and the colonized mindset. But now the second piece of where are the black people? Black people were the people who paved the way for you to enjoy some of the freedoms that you utilized against other folks of color. I want you to think about that. Now, I know there were some big name Latino or Hispanic folks that marched with King. I know that. But I'm going to pose the same question. Where were the folks after that? There's a big time gap. Where were the folks for Latasha Harlin? Where were the folks in Howard Beach and Jones Beach? Where were the folks for Rodney King? And for me, the most egregious, if I had to name the most egregious, because they're all atrocious, was Latasha Harlin's. And I believe the woman that killed her, it was a woman that shot her in the back. Latasha was a teenager. The woman was Korean. And the folks in Koreatown immediately went to arms. But the incident that started that particular riot was that little black girl went into the store and bought some orange juice. But because she was black, she was accused of stealing. Look at the mindset and look at the historic context of the situation. Now, it should not be black and white, but unfortunately it is. And folks are calling on black people to be present in the numbers that they felt that they showed up for us. I'm all for reciprocity. But you need to recognize what showing up will mean for the African American community as well. Since you're full aware of Black Lives Matter, you need to be full aware of the ramifications of Black people showing up in mass. So we have to say this is not our fight, because we're already over-policed. And you know this, based on your showing up. You know this, you know the facts. Somebody has to show up. Now, we're calling on politicians. Hey, why aren't you here? Somebody has to stand in the gap for representation. Now, if I get arrested, I'm speaking in terms of political policy now. If our politicians, the representation gets arrested, then that gives people permission to move into spaces that they don't belong in and to become spokespeople. You know, silence doesn't mean nothing's happening. Silence is also a movement. Silence equates to being stealth in your movements. Again, just because there's no presence does not mean there's nothing happening. That part.